She tied her shoes, kissed her husband goodbye, and said she'd be back in 45 minutes. It was 6:17 a.m. She never came home, and no one ever saw her again. How does a woman vanish in broad daylight with no witnesses, no sound, no clue? It wasn't supposed to be a dramatic morning. No eerie fog. No chilling silence. Just another Thursday in the safe, tree-lined suburb of Riverview Heights. A place where joggers waved at neighbors and dogs barked at squirrels. The kind of town where people felt invincible. And yet, by 7:02 a.m., everything would change. Emma Carlisle, 33, was the kind of woman everyone admired but also quietly envied. She was a full-time nurse, a mom to a 3-year-old daughter named Lily, and a devoted wife to her high school sweetheart, Nathan. Somehow, she still found time for morning jogs, her sacred, stress-relieving ritual before chaos kicked in. On the morning of May 5, 2022, Emma left her house wearing a pink windbreaker, black leggings, and her signature bright blue Nike shoes. She laced up tightly, stretched at the edge of their front lawn, and told Nathan she'd be back before he needed to leave for work. "I'll take the lake loop," she said, referring to the familiar 3.4-mile route that wrapped around a nearby wooded reservoir. She often posted selfies along the trail, sunrise filtering through the trees, music blaring through her AirPods, sweat glistening on her forehead. But that day, there was no selfie, no texts, no Strava update, no footsteps in the gravel. It was as if Emma had been swallowed by the earth. By 7:10 a.m., Nathan began to worry. It wasn't like her to be late, especially not without calling. He called her phone, straight to voicemail. He sent a text, "You good?" No reply. At 7:30 a.m., he strapped Lily into her car seat and drove the lake loop himself. He circled twice, rolled down his window, even parked and walked parts of the trail. No sign of Emma. By 8:12 a.m., he called 911. Detectives from the Riverview Heights PD responded quickly, but without panic. They assumed it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Emma had sprained her ankle and gotten a ride home with a fellow jogger. Maybe she was resting somewhere. It had happened before in similar cases. But as the hours passed, her absence deepened into dread. No CCTV picked her up past a certain intersection. A camera outside a pharmacy 2 blocks from the lake loop caught her jogging across the street at 6:23 a.m. After that, nothing. Just blank space. The police retraced the trail. They brought in search dogs, helicopters, volunteers from the community. Everyone wanted to help. They found a granola bar wrapper, a pair of sunglasses, none of it hers. And then something strange happened. At 4:45 p.m., her phone pinged. What? A brief, unexplained signal from a cell tower 13 miles north of town. The phone then went dead again. Investigators brought in geolocation experts. They canvassed gas stations, checked traffic cams. But there were no signs of Emma, her clothes, or her phone. The media descended by day 2. Young mom missing after morning run was splashed across the evening news. Social media exploded. TikTok sleuths speculated she'd been kidnapped. Others said she had run away. A few even suspected her husband. Nathan cooperated fully, handed over his phone, sat through polygraphs, and invited news cameras into their living room. "I just want my wife back," he kept saying, holding Lily in his lap. But something felt off. There were no signs of a struggle. Her body wasn't found. No ransom call ever came. The trail was cold, and yet it didn't feel like a clean getaway. One neighbor reported seeing a white pickup truck parked oddly near the trail entrance around 6:30 a.m. It had out-of-state plates. By the time they mentioned it, the vehicle was gone. Another witness, a jogger Emma often greeted, said he thought he saw her run past him that morning but couldn't be sure. "I didn't really look up," he admitted. By the end of the first week, Riverview Heights wasn't the same town anymore. Parents refused to let their kids out of sight. Joggers stopped jogging. The woods around the lake felt like a graveyard, not a getaway. Posters of Emma's face were taped to every mailbox and pinned to every phone pole. Her smile became a haunting fixture on street corners, hopeful and hollow all at once. The family raised reward money. A GoFundMe campaign went viral, gathering over $100,000 in donations. They used the funds to hire a private investigator. But even he came up short. Weeks passed, then months. Nobody. No suspect. No confession. Just one undeniable truth. Emma Carlisle had vanished into thin air. Behind the scenes, investigators were slowly gathering pieces that didn't fit the image of a perfect life. A series of deleted texts. A security system that had been disabled the morning she disappeared. A husband who, despite appearing devastated, had secrets he hadn't yet revealed. But those would only come to light later, after another shocking twist turned this from a disappearance into something far darker. If you were gripped by this mystery, stay with us. What happened to Emma is only just beginning to unravel. Hit subscribe, tap the bell icon, and stay tuned as we dive in. The baby monitor blinked in silence. Emma's husband, Darren, thought nothing of it. She always ran early. But as the minutes stretched into hours, the silence began to suffocate. Her phone rang endlessly on the nightstand. Her favorite water bottle still sat on the kitchen counter. Panic wasn't a wave, it was a slow, crushing tide that began swallowing his world. Darren Price was a creature of routine, just like his wife, Emma. Every morning, he'd hear the front door click shut as she slipped out for her jog at exactly 6:30 a.m. She ran the same 3-mile loop through their peaceful suburb in Red Oak, Missouri. Sometimes she'd be back before their baby girl even stirred. But this morning was different. At first, he didn't notice the time. The baby monitor was still and quiet. He rolled over, enjoying the rare silence. But when he finally stretched and glanced at the clock, it was nearly 8:15 a.m. Emma should have been back long ago. He called out her name softly at first, then louder, urgency rising in his throat. Emma? No answer. He checked the bathroom, the kitchen, the driveway. The jogging stroller was still there, untouched. Her car keys remained in the bowl by the door. Her phone was still on the nightstand, its screen lit up with a dozen unread messages from her running app, notifications she'd never opened. A chill rippled through him. Darren strapped their daughter into the car seat and drove along Emma's jogging route, scanning the sidewalks and park trails. Her favorite trail curved along the edge of the woods behind the elementary school, a quiet stretch where she often stopped to rest. He drove it twice. No sign of her. He stopped 2 women walking their dogs and asked if they'd seen anyone jogging earlier. A woman in a blue hoodie and black leggings. Both shook their heads. Back home, Darren's thoughts spiraled. He dialed Emma's sister, Rachel. Have you heard from her? No. Darren, what's going on? That's when his voice cracked. She never came back. By 10:15 a.m., he'd called the police. My wife went out for a jog this morning and she's missing. The dispatcher's voice was calm, but Darren felt like he was floating above himself. It didn't feel real. He repeated Emma's description. 5 feet 7 inches, brown hair in a ponytail, wearing her usual jogging gear. A patrol car arrived within 15 minutes. Officer Lindsay Weller stepped out, her notepad already in hand. When did you last see her? She asked. Darren's voice shook. This morning around 6:30. She usually runs 3 miles. She never made it back. Did she take her phone? No, it's still here. Officer Weller exchanged a look with her partner. Let's start with her usual route. We'll notify nearby patrol units to keep watch. As officers canvassed the area, Darren's house became a revolving door. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Emma's sister Rachel arrived, face pale and trembling. No footprints. No witnesses. No sign. The park where Emma jogged was cordoned off by 1 p.m. Officers and volunteers fanned out along the wooded trails, calling her name. A K-9 unit was brought in. They picked up Emma's scent near the trailhead and lost it within 30 feet. No shoe prints. No dropped items. No struggle. It was as if she'd been swallowed by the earth. Did she have any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt her? Detective Carla Mendez asked, now leading the case. Darren shook his head. No one. She's loved here. Everyone knows Emma. But police would soon find out, there was a part of Emma's life no one did know. A growing shadow that Darren, and maybe even Emma herself, had tried to ignore. By that evening, Emma's disappearance was all over the news. Local mom vanishes on jog, Red Oak on edge. The headlines read. The Facebook page Find Emma Price went live within 24 hours. Strangers volunteered to join search parties. Others offered prayers and meals. But behind the support was a gnawing fear. If someone like Emma could vanish on a sunny morning, no one was safe. Rachel sat with the baby that night, watching the news on mute, her face hollow. She wouldn't leave her daughter. Darren. Someone took her. But who? And why? If you felt that knot in your stomach reading this, you're not alone. What happened to Emma felt impossible, but it was only the beginning. Tap subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Because the truth that emerged will haunt this town forever. One late-night phone call changed everything. A stranger's voice cracked through the static, trembling and terrified. I saw her. I know where she is. But by the time police traced the number, it was already disconnected. The first 2 weeks after Olivia Dawson's disappearance felt like living in the eye of a storm. The community had reached a painful equilibrium, torn between hope and resignation. Posters faded in the summer sun, candlelight vigils dimmed with repetition, and the news cycle shifted to fresher tragedies. Then out of nowhere came the call. At 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday, the Cayuga County Sheriff's Office Dispatch Center received a brief, chilling call. The man's voice was breathless and rapid, almost paranoid. "She's not dead," he said. "She's being kept, in the old sawmill, near Lake Hemlock." Before the dispatcher could respond with questions, the line went dead. Reverse lookup hit a burner phone with no registration, possibly prepaid and dumped. But the mention of the abandoned sawmill was enough to jolt investigators out of their stagnation. The sawmill sat 2 miles east of the main trail where Olivia was last seen. It had been shut down for a decade after a workplace accident and subsequent lawsuits. The property was fenced off and technically owned by an out-of-state holding company. Nobody had any reason to be there, until now. Sheriff Keller and his team arrived at dawn with a K-9 unit, drone support, and a forensic team on standby. The building was a hollow shell, windows smashed and half the roof collapsed. Inside there were signs of recent activity: beer cans, cigarette butts, even a crude mattress on the floor made from insulation foam and dirty blankets. But no Olivia. No traces of blood, hair, or personal belongings. No fingerprints on the cans. No clear evidence that she had ever been there. The forensic team swept every inch of the site. Nothing. Yet the call had sounded sincere. Desperate even. The story of the anonymous caller hit the media almost immediately. Public speculation exploded. Was it a hoax? A guilty conscience? Or someone trying to throw the investigation off track? Meanwhile, Olivia's husband, Mark Dawson, faced his own quiet torment. He had begun having disturbing dreams, Olivia's face in the woods, eyes wide, trying to speak but making no sound. He'd wake drenched in sweat, her wedding ring clasped in his palm. He rarely left the house except to walk the trail, alone, retracing her route, looking for anything everyone else might have missed. It was on one of those walks that he noticed something odd, a small wooden cross stuck deep in the underbrush off-trail. It was crude, just 2 twigs tied together with twine, half buried in the soil. Next to it, a partially burnt piece of cloth. He called the detectives immediately. They came, documented the site, and collected the cloth, which appeared to be a torn part of a sports bra. Possibly Olivia's. DNA testing would take weeks. Then came the second call. This time the voice was female, older, more composed. She didn't say her name. "He watches them run," she said. "He waits until the sun is just right." The call lasted 23 seconds. It was also from a burner. Also untraceable. That's when investigators began to consider something darker than a domestic dispute or random abduction. They started to map unsolved disappearances of women across New York over the last 10 years, especially those involving joggers or hikers. A potential pattern began to emerge, but it was still too faint, too speculative. Olivia's case was morphing into something larger, possibly serial, and yet none of it could bring her home. Not yet. If this story has you hooked, subscribe to the channel for more chilling contents. What do you think happens next? The sun was rising, the town waking. But in one living room, time stood still. Her toddler's cries echoed through the house. Her shoes were gone. Her phone, still on the counter. Whatever happened out there, it was no ordinary disappearance. It was a message, and someone wanted it buried. The search tightens. By day 4, the entire town of Glenridge felt like it was holding its breath. Flyers bearing Melanie Carter's face fluttered on every lamppost and cafe window. The soft, rounded face of the 32-year-old mother, still fresh in everyone's memory, now felt ghost-like, haunting sidewalks and shop fronts. Volunteers combed nearby trails in teams, their voices strained from calling her name, their hope thinning with every unanswered shout. Detective Lisa Monroe had been with Glenridge PD for over a decade. She'd seen runaways, overdoses, even one domestic abduction. But this was different. No body, no signs of a struggle. Just silence. Monroe stood over a spread of maps and search grid data in the makeshift command center inside the town library. "This case is ice cold," her partner, Officer Trey Logan, muttered, flipping through Melanie's case file. 4 days out. No sightings, no surveillance. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. And there it was. The first official admission that this wasn't an accident. Not a misstep off a trail. Not some deranged stranger in the woods. This was targeted. Back at the Carter home, Ryan sat alone at the kitchen table. The high chair sat untouched, the baby now being looked after by Melanie's sister across town. Ryan hadn't left the house since the day Melanie vanished. Reporters camped outside, but he ignored them. He stared blankly at the mug in his hand. Her mug. He'd told the police everything again and again. She kissed him goodbye. She went out for a run. She was wearing her favorite gray hoodie, the one with the little wine stain on the sleeve. Her earbuds were in. She took the front path. He went back to bed. That's it. But Monroe wasn't convinced. Something about Ryan didn't sit right. Too composed. Too clinical in how he recounted events. She'd seen that before. In cases where grief wasn't natural, it was rehearsed. Digital footprints. Day 5 brought a potential break. Melanie's Fitbit data, pulled from her online account, showed her heart rate spiked drastically at 6:19 a.m. on the morning she disappeared, just 13 minutes after she left the house. Then, nothing. No movement. No vitals. Like someone had snatched her mid-stride. The device had disconnected from her phone at 6:22 a.m. Authorities narrowed the search to a mile-long stretch of wooded trail on the east side of Glenridge Park. Dogs were brought in. Forensics swept the area. And finally, a chilling find. Half buried under a log, Melanie's left running shoe, laces still tied. No blood. No signs of trauma. But it was hers. I think she knew whoever came after her, Monroe said in a late-night press conference. This wasn't a random act. Reporters pounced. Who would want to hurt Melanie Carter? Was it a friend? A neighbor? Her own husband? Cracks in the marriage. As suspicion shifted, Monroe re-interviewed Melanie's close friends. That's when they heard it. The things Melanie never said publicly, but whispered at brunch or over text. She told me she felt watched, like someone was always 2 steps behind her, her friend April revealed. I thought it was postpartum stress. But now, I don't know. She said Ryan could be controlling, said another. Little things. He'd get upset if she ran too long, if she wore certain leggings. He acted supportive, but only when people were around. That opened the door. Monroe got a warrant and searched the Carter home. The baby monitor's cloud storage revealed arguments. Melanie's voice on one clip, "You don't own me, Ryan. You can't control everything." Still, it wasn't proof. Just tension. And tension alone didn't make someone a killer. Turning point. Day 7. A trail camera mounted by a wildlife group, located 3/4 of a mile from the search zone, captured something strange at 6:25 a.m. the morning Melanie disappeared. A black SUV driving slowly along the unpaved fire road. Ryan Carter drove a black SUV. When confronted, Ryan said he had taken the car to a drive-thru around 6:30 for coffee, then returned. No receipt. No traffic cam footage. And when pressed further, his story cracked. He admitted to leaving the house but claimed he forgot to mention it because he didn't think it mattered. Monroe now had reason to believe Melanie's disappearance wasn't just suspicious, it was staged. Still, they had no body. No confirmed crime scene. No arrest. Just a missing woman, a husband with secrets, and a town running out of hope. What secrets do you think Ryan is hiding? Tap subscribe and stay with us, because the silence is about to break wide open. What the police missed in the first week could have saved her. A single detail, overlooked, dismissed, could have cracked it wide open. But the longer the trail stayed cold, the deeper the secrets buried themselves beneath a town desperate to protect its own. 10 days had passed since Rachel Logan disappeared, and the town of Alder Creek was no longer whispering, they were shouting. Rumors surged like wildfire through online forums, church pews, and workplace break rooms. Everyone had a theory, but no one had an answer. Rachel's husband, Eric, was quickly becoming the center of speculation. Not because of hard evidence, but because of his face. The flat calm in every interview, the eerie composure that made even seasoned investigators uneasy. He cried at the vigil, yes. But it looked rehearsed and people noticed. Detective Mallory Grant was back at her desk, sorting through files that now felt like dead weight. Search efforts had turned up nothing new. No fresh footprints. No torn fabric. No sign of a body. It was as if Rachel had evaporated. Then came a break. A man named Connor Ellsworth, a landscaper and local with a minor criminal record, walked into the station holding a trembling cigarette and a phone full of voice memos. "You need to hear this," he told Mallory. "I didn't want to get involved, but I heard something that morning. In the woods. Around 6:10 a.m. Mallory leaned forward. "Go on." Connor played the recording. Birds chirped faintly, then, distorted by distance, a woman's voice. Panicked. Arguing with someone. "Let me go, don't touch me." Pause. Then a man's voice. "Come low. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Static took over, but the silence that followed in Mallory's office was deafening. Connor explained he'd recorded that audio by accident while preparing a voice memo for a client. He thought it was a domestic spat, didn't want to get involved, but the town's hysteria changed his mind. Mallory had it analyzed. Experts confirmed the voice likely matched Rachel's. The man's voice, while distorted, couldn't be ruled out as Eric's. The audio alone wasn't enough to arrest anyone, but it reopened the case with a new urgency. Mallory revisited Rachel's closest friends and found something she'd missed. Emily Vasquez, Rachel's coworker, hesitated when asked about Rachel's mental health. Then she broke down. She wasn't crazy, Emily sobbed. She was scared. She thought someone was tracking her, watching her. We all thought it was paranoia. Now I think it was real. Another friend, Leah Thomas, said Rachel had confided something disturbing just a week before her disappearance. She said Eric put a GPS tracker in her car. She found it hidden under the back seat. She confronted him, and he said it was for her safety. Mallory's pulse quickened. This was the crack she needed. She ordered a forensic sweep of Rachel's car, which had been untouched since the search began. Hidden inside the glove box lining was a small black tracking device. Battery dead. But the model was clear. And it was registered to Eric Logan's business account. Confronted with the GPS evidence, Eric changed his story. At first, he claimed it was placed there during a previous break-in. When Mallory showed him the purchase order and time-stamped receipt, his demeanor shifted. Fine, he snapped. I was worried she'd hurt herself. I needed to make sure she was safe. Gaslighting, again. But this time it was on record. A search warrant was granted for the couple's home. In the basement, detectives found a small box hidden behind insulation in the ceiling. Inside, a burner phone, a second GPS device, and printed screenshots of Rachel's emails with her therapist. The burner phone had only one number stored, and it was traced to an unlisted VoIP account linked to Eric's IP address. The content of the text was chilling. You think you can run from me? They won't believe you. I'll make sure of it. It was clear, Eric hadn't just gaslit Rachel. He was preparing to frame her, isolate her, and erase her. When news of the GPS tracker and threatening messages broke, public opinion flipped overnight. The town that once defended Eric began to withdraw their support. Reporters returned. Camera crews set up near the trail. Online, amateur sleuths dissected every second of the recovered audio. Eric Logan was still a free man, but now he was a man hunted by truth. And somewhere in those woods, Rachel's final moments still whispered through the trees. If you've made it this far, you're invested in uncovering the truth just like we are. Subscribe to stay updated and hit the bell so you never miss what happens next. The story's not over yet. They thought the case had gone cold, until a forest ranger stumbled on a torn piece of clothing buried beneath the roots of an old oak tree. It matched what she was last seen wearing. What else was hidden in those woods, and why had it stayed silent for so long? The 6-month mark came with more grief than closure. Candlelight vigils, Facebook memorials, and fading flyers stapled to telephone poles marked Emily's absence like scars across the town. Despite search parties, media coverage, and statewide alerts, there was no real movement, until February 3rd. Dale Hammond, a veteran park ranger with a sharp eye and quiet demeanor, was making his usual patrol near an overgrown trailhead in the state forest adjacent to Havenwood. It was off limits to the public due to rockfall hazards and erosion. But something unnatural caught his eye, a small area of disturbed soil, with a scrap of light blue fabric poking through. It was weather-worn, but unmistakably similar to the shirt Emily had worn the morning she vanished. Authorities descended on the scene. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Forensic teams began combing the area. 2 days into the excavation, deeper beneath the roots of a large oak, they found a partially decomposed athletic shoe and strands of long blonde hair. DNA testing confirmed it was Emily's. She had been here the whole time, less than 3 miles from her home. Shock swept through Havenwood. The once idyllic trail had become a graveyard. But what haunted everyone more than the discovery itself was the lack of trauma on her remains. The autopsy ruled out blunt force injuries or gunshots. Toxicology came back negative. The medical examiner's report read, possible asphyxiation, cause of death undetermined. That left only questions. Investigators began to re-interview everyone, neighbors, family, co-workers. And one person had moved away quietly just weeks after Emily disappeared. Owen Mathers, the owner of a local gym Emily had frequented. He had been helpful during initial questioning but never volunteered information. Now with a fresh lead, police dug deeper. They discovered something disturbing. Owen had previously been investigated in a 2017 missing person case in another state. His ex-girlfriend, who vanished after ending their relationship. No charges had been filed due to lack of evidence. Suddenly, the narrative around Emily's disappearance shifted. The gym's surveillance footage from the day she vanished had a blind spot, the back alley where Owen often parked. It was near the trail Emily jogged. Police issued a warrant to search his former property. Inside a shed, they found a box labeled Old Gear. Inside were women's running shoes, several hair ties, and, chillingly, a blue GPS fitness watch. The watch, when recharged, synced to a cloud account. The final route it recorded traced Emily's exact path on the day she vanished, but it stopped abruptly in the woods near the oak tree. Owen was arrested for obstruction and placed under investigation for homicide. During interrogation, he remained eerily calm. "She came willingly," he said, "but she didn't want to go back." That sentence sent shivers down the spines of everyone in the room. Was he confessing to luring her away? Was it manipulation, coercion, or worse? Owen later recanted, stating Emily had run off into the woods during a private conversation. He claimed he didn't report it because he panicked. Authorities didn't buy it. Prosecutors began building their case. But it wasn't airtight. There was no video, no eyewitness, no conclusive cause of death. Emily's family faced a painful decision: accept a potential plea deal or push for trial and risk Owen walking free. They chose to fight. And so the stage was set for a high-profile trial that would divide Havenwood, and finally bring to light the secrets surrounding Emily's final moments. Sometimes the scariest part of a story isn't the crime itself, but how easily it could happen to someone you love. One quiet neighborhood, one morning routine, and in a blink, a life stolen. If this story shook you, made you feel something, don't just scroll past. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a case that needs to be heard. Tap the bell to stay updated on stories that often go untold. And tell us in the comments, what do you think really happened on that trail? Could justice still be found years later? Every like, comment, and subscription helps keep these voices alive. Let's bring light to the shadows, together.